з місць проведення антитерористичної операції вже тут Андрій Лисенко, речник інформаційного центру РНБО. Прошу, пане Андрію.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. During the day, units of ATO actively were moving forward in four directions to Donetsk, Luhansk, Alchev, Stakhanov, Tversk, Snizhne. Gunmen have big losses of staff and equipment. That's why among Russian mercenaries there is a bad mood, and some of them desert, and some of them disoriented, disappointed. They don't have one strategy of how to continue the fight. The biggest losses terrorists had near Lovaisk and in suburbs and in the villages in Donetsk region. Also, ATO blocked a lot of gunmen and equipment in Krasny Luch and Tretsitovsky district in Luhansk region. In addition to that, units of armed forces of Ukraine were focused on isolated Donetsk and the Horivka gangs of terrorists. Mechanized battalion of territorial units made raids, which allow, if not to stop that, and leads to decrease supplies of resources to terrorists in those regions. And also, Ukrainian military men improved the system of firing and engineering equipment of a new block post. Recently created battalion, Golden Gate, started to search for remnants of terrorists of Krasnoyarsk and Luhansk region. In general, during the day, ATO forces 26 times had an final engagement with terrorists near Horlivka, Stepanivka, Amvrosivka, Georgiivka, Novosvitlivka, Krasny Luch, Stukalova Balka, Ilyinka, Vesela Tarasivka, Zhovta, Sabivka, Chaluskinets, Kamishne, Pisky, Makarova, Miusinsk, and Lugansk. Yesterday, after Russian strikes from Grad system, they destroyed completely a village Stepanivka, in which more than 1,000 people live, civilians live. Here's these pictures from military cameraman, and you see those the damages to that village. The Ukrainian military armed forces were not there, not in that village. They continue to make strikes against ATO from Russian Federation and their efforts of illegal penetration to territory of Ukraine of Russian mercenaries under fire. Last night, from Manesky Russian Federation, they made strikes from artillery and mortars. They were making strikes upon our border guards in Stanich and Luhansk. And last night, they were making strikes against upon border crossing point Uspiansk and Donetsk region. Then they were making strike against border guards near Krasnitalovka, Milova, and Ivanivka. Terrorists don't stop ignoring all international rules of engagement. The evacuation of wounded from one of the block posts, a sanitary vehicle got under mortar shells of terrorists, and it was destroyed. We will give you information about casualties. In Makarova and Pisk in Luhansk region, terrorists made an unsuccessful effort to attack our paratroopers, and they received a very good answer and had big losses. Daily, Russian drones trespass airspace of Ukraine. In Kherson, from Crimea, the biggest activity is observed not far from Komisarivka and Henichesky district on Rabatska Strilka. During the last day, Russian drones trespassed Ukrainian state border 5 times near Krasnotalovka, Milova, in Kherson region and not far from Berdyansk. The situation in cities and towns and units of armed forces of Ukraine provide any assistance in liberated cities, and they help to renovate infrastructure, and they make a search to find explosives. Yesterday, terrorist was shot in central districts of Luhansk, and traditionally they blame Ukrainian military men. In Donetsk, also the bandits that were shooting shelling on 11 districts, and there are people who died. In Krasnodon, Luhansk region, militants on a tank, they had an accident with a trolley bus. This is what was survived from the trolley bus, and the driver of that trolley bus died, and some people were wounded. Daily to the hotline of ATO in Mariupol, we receive about 50 calls from Donetsk and Luhansk regions. People inform about crimes of terrorists and places of their dislocation. In addition to that, they ask to switch off Russian TV channels which provide not objective information about the situation in the east of Ukraine, and continue propaganda in Donetsk and Lugansk regions. Once again, the phone of ATO 09483711805. President of Ukraine Poroshenko had a phone conversation with U.S. State Secretary John Kerry. John Kerry greeted the initiative of President Poroshenko to organize international humanitarian mission for residents of Luhansk. He assessed highly the work of President Poroshenko on Friday, August 8, when Ukraine demanded legitimate procedures of humanitarian to be followed. President Poroshenko thanked the U.S. for support and informed John Kerry that he invited representatives of Red Cross to coordinate all the issues how to organize humanitarian assistance. To efforts of Russia to interfere to the territory of Ukraine under the mask of peacekeeping forces, foreign states condemned the Russian Federation. Yesterday, Frank-Walter Steinmeier from Germany, he told the humanitarian mission in the east of Ukraine could be done only excluding the agreement of Kiev and under the umbrella of independent and experienced international organizations like International Committee of Red Cross. The same position there was the same position of Linkevičius, that is Foreign Ministry of Lithuania, who expressed that he was not happy with the rhetoric of Moscow as to efforts to bring a peacekeeping contingent to territory. He told that to solve the humanitarian assistance in Donbass, only an international mechanism should be used. And there will be a question about losses. Probably that's why I'm happy to say right away, the liberation of Ukraine during the last day, six military men died, 24 wounded. All of them receive medical treatment. Also, I can announce the general losses during ATO. On 9 o'clock today, 568 Ukrainian military men died. 2,120 were wounded. Thank you for your attention. Now your questions, please. The question here. Our journalist communicated with members of Brigade 72, and they had day off for several days, and now they are sent to Melitopol. Why they are not allowed to have a normal recreation? And will they be in a battle again in ATO area tomorrow and the day after? I'm not ready to answer your question because military men of Brigade 72, they went through many tests, and they provided medical assistance and psychological assistance, and they had a chance for recreation, and they are all military men. They understand if there is a need to make a final step to liberate Ukraine, probably will be sent to 80 already. But this is not the final information, because some of them will be replaced through rotation. They will be regrouped, and they will have a chance to arrest. Thank you. Tell me, please, a humanitarian corridor in Luhansk. Is there information? How is it functioning? What about civilians? How civilians are taken from Luhansk region and also from Donetsk region? Thank you. The corridors are working in Luhansk region, and they assembled in Shast, and Donetsk region is the. As to Ukrainian military men, they allow to move through the territory which is liberated from terrorists. People can move freely, and also we ask civilians if there is a chance leave those cities for some time, because there will be operation to liberate those cities and to destroy terrorists. That's why we're ready to provide all possible transportation to take people out from those cities. And civilians, we invite you to leave. But if you're not, you cannot leave. Wait a bit. We cannot enter cities. We don't do like they did in Russia and in the Caucasus, where they cleaned, they shelled on cities and destroy the cities completely. We need to save the life of civilians and infrastructure for them to build peaceful life afterwards. As you know, the operation to put siege on these cities is almost ready, and supplies routes are practically cut off between Donetsk and Luhansk. There are very active engagements. Day and night, terrorists are not given time to rest, because our brigades are renewed all the time. And there is a chance to move on and to rotate. Terrorists don't have the chance. If we use this, if we make a pause on our main direction, terrorists will regroup, and they will bring more equipment, and more civilians and our military men die. So that's why we move non-stop, and that's why we need experienced military men. 1+1. The situation around Brigade 24 mechanized. They were 50 days, 52 days they were there, and they got out of the siege, and they moved to Kharkiv, and then they will be moved to ATO. What about the plans of ATO about that brigade? Why officers were liberated from Russia? Where are they now, and what are the plans about them? As to Brigade 24, unfortunately, I don't have precise information. Yes, they were taken out from that district where they had losses. They were taken out to be regrouped and to re-equip them, and to renovate their level of engage readiness. So some of them, they will be replaced on a rotation base, but to dismiss the whole brigade to home, it's impossible. It will be not right tactically. I told you we have an active offense, and we have no right to stop and to make a pause. And they will have a chance to rest, but partially, not all at the same time. As to officers, those officers who arrived to Ukraine, information about their location is not provided because of the security issues. So we don't provide information on where on their whereabouts, but they will return to their units.
East, two questions. One, can I get clarification on the figures you gave for dead and wounded soldiers? Does that include volunteer battalions as well? And second question, there was a report of a shelling of the prison in Donetsk. Why was the prison targeted?
Thank you for questions.
Дуже цікаво. To the first question. Number of casualties. I gave the numbers of those who died during ATO, and those are military forces of Ukraine, armed forces, and from Ministry of Interior, State Border Guard Service, and National Guards, and SBU. As to voluntary battalions, they are a part of one of those armed forces. Despite they have their own names, like Azov, etc., but they belonged to SBU, Ministry of Interior, or Defense, Ministry of Defense, or to National Guards. So why gunmen had to attack the prison? A very good question. Russian Federation, they tell the whole world that in the east of Ukraine there's a humanitarian catastrophe, and Ukrainian military men shall live in districts and including that prison 124. It is done to tell the whole world that only Russian Federation can has a solution for this conflict, and only Russian Federation can help to localize this humanitarian catastrophe. At the same time, they supply terrorists with Russian ammunition, with Russian weapons, Russian mercenary gunmen who do that. So this is absolute provocation from Russian Federation. We have a lot of evidence that the shelling is done, those strikes are done by terrorists from different locations. We have information that they place grad system and mortars, cannons on buildings, on top of the buildings, and then tanks and grad system they place in level areas on stadiums. And also that's where they place also mortar positions, and they strike, for example, in Donetsk. They from airport where Ukrainian military men have a controls area, but they do those provocations from nearby, just to tell the whole world that those strikes are made by Ukrainian military men. I want to tell you that during those strikes, terrorists don't suffer somehow. Ask that question. Only civilians.
Can you just be clear that the evacuation of the prison in Donetsk was not done by the Ukrainian military, you're saying?
Будь ласка, ще раз підтвердіть, що обстріл колонії не був здійснений українськими військами.
Я ще
I would like to emphasize Ukrainian military men don't shell on prisons upon shells upon living areas. We don't use artillery or airstrikes against living districts or prisons, including that prison 124 in Donetsk. It makes no sense for us to shell the prison. Our goal is to liberate cities, and our aim is a terrorist with weapons, armed terrorist. We received a call from relatives of one soldier. He's in Brigade 95, and a military commander told that he died in Osinsk. But then separatists called his relatives and told them that they hold him hostage. Come after the briefing, I will take all the information, I'll record it, and I will try to find information about that. Terrorists always use their phones. They received coordinates, and they follow families of military men. That's why usually we don't mention names in our reports for families of our military men and not to be after. And there are a lot of provocations done by terrorists against their families, and they call them and they say, "We arrested your son, and bring money, then we will give your son back." So, please, those are provocations. Inform police or inform SBU, because they work operationally on that information, and they find an answer to such questions like yours quickly. For example, when our 5 officers were on the territory of Russia, they called their relatives and they told that lawyers are called. Don't give that number to anyone. They will negotiate. They need some money for negotiations, etc. But those were not lawyers. And even after they were liberated, the calls were still coming. So they don't coordinate that activity. There were provocations also. One mother of a soldier was called, and he really died. And they used his mobile phone, and they told that his mother could take him from somewhere, and she gave that information to ATO headquarters. And we sent a special group to liberate him, but through intelligence, it became clear that there was a trap. And only because of intelligence, we were able to find out that he really died, and they were preparing a trap through that mobile phone. So please, all mobile calls, especially if they call to mass media, write down, especially the number from which they call, who called, and then through special bodies we will find out who did it and what was their purpose. There are a lot of mobile attacks against newspapers. You know probably about that. And a lot of mothers called, so-called mothers, allegedly mothers. And our women, mothers, are very sensitive, and there's group psychosis or massive psychosis. There are a lot of such cases when those things are provoked, and that is a part of information warfare against Ukraine by Russian Federation. So be very careful about these such calls, and write down and think about why they do that. What about green corridors, and from which cities people should get out to continue ATO? Thank you for your question. ATO will continue in any case. For civilians, it's better if they leave big cities like Luhansk and Donetsk, because they are just, we prepare to liberate them. Green corridors. From Luhansk, I told you that they have to go to Shastya. And from Donetsk, I forgot the place where they should move to. I will give you that information later. It doesn't come to my mind. One more question. Could you clarify about deserting terrorists? Were there cases? What about new supplies from Russia? I mean, equipment and also mercenaries. Thank you for your information, for your question. We would be very thankful for information about supplies of mercenaries along traditional supply routes. We observe that steel equipment is coming from vehicles are coming from Russian territory, but not in that amount. It's because of the situation with terrorists. Many of them they call ATO. They try to sell something for preservation of their life. They are ready to give information about location of headquarters of terrorists and location of positions, equipment, of vehicles, etc. But on the territory of Ukraine, there is Ukrainian legislation. I would like to tell you right away, and everyone who was involved in crimes but decided to cooperate and has information, and that they can make the guilt softer, and they will be given a chance to live and to be in the court. But that will be they will at least they will have life. At least they will not die on that territory. You told that there is village Stepanivka, Donetsk Oblast. It was destroyed, and how many casualties in that village? Do you have information about how many civilians died during ATO? From Donetsk, there is Dashne, a green corridor goes to Dashne. That's where the column is built, and then IDPs will be sent to camps where they can get help, where they can get support and assistance. As to Stepanivka, that village which was under the shelling from Russian Federation, we don't have information about civilian casualties. We are trying to collect that information. As to civilian casualties under the territory of terrorists, which is under the control of terrorists, we'll get the data only after the liberation of that territory. Local authorities that are half legal They are not responsible for that. And also they cannot provide us subject information. So it's quite difficult to find out how many civilian casualties are on those territories. Thank you very much. We'll have Andriy Lysenko at 5 o'clock here again. Thank you.